You can't make the mistake of thinking that this is somebody else's problem.
This is a mass casualty event like the Sandy Hook Elementary shootings or the Boston Marathon bombing. And according to Dr. Alexander Eastman, casualties in such chaos might be inevitable, but adopting a new response framework of law enforcement treating victims for hemorrhaging before they are transported to trauma centers can help prevent greater loss of life.
It's a novel role for the law enforcement officer. These injury patterns simply don't allow a longer transition of care to occur. So we've got to give these hemorrhage control techniques to law enforcement officers, our first responders in these events.
Training police officers to control a victim's bleeding is a key tenet in a document known as the Hartford Consensus, created by members of the medical, military, and law enforcement communities, and championed by the American College of Surgeons. Recently adopted by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, the document outlines ways that communities can prepare for mass casualties and includes teaching law enforcement officers and other first responders to adopt new skills.
I think if you look at active shooter events across the United States over the last decade, they haven't just been in, certainly they've had their fair share in big cities, but they've been in little cities too. So this can happen in any community at any time. And I think that because of that, every community needs to be as best prepared as possible.
Because of the nature of weapons used by perpetrators of these massacres, hemorrhaging is more of an issue than ever before.
There is the ability for the public to access high-velocity weapons. Weapons like an AK-47 or an AR-15 is firing a round that's traveling in excess of 3,000 feet per second, which when it strikes human flesh, transmits in a tremendous amount of energy and causes a tremendous amount of destruction.
When you see the carnage that a military-grade bullet can produce when fired at very close range into people, it leaves a profound effect on you. And this is totally compounded when they're children. So something good had to come of this.
So Dr. Jacobs, a regent for the College of Surgeons, sought what he says is the wisdom of others.
So I went to I'm a member of the Board of Regents of the American College of Surgeons, and at the next Regents meeting, the Regents charged me to chair a committee to increase survival from active shooter and intentional mass casualty events.
These wisdom counselors, so to speak, developed the threat model to help community leaders understand the current framework for mass casualty response and the new framework necessary to protect more lives.
The current situation, there are three zones. There's a hot or danger zone where there's usually an active shooter. There is a warm or not secure zone, which isn't totally secure, but it's not as dangerous. And then there's a cold or safe zone.
Classically, law enforcement would be the only ones allowed in the danger zone, where the victims are, until the threat is under control. But during that time, victims are quickly bleeding to death.
Well, and what we've done with the threat analogy is really compress the three zones, and that compresses time. It also encourages the law enforcement people to get involved in stopping bleeding.
The group advocating for change hopes surgeons will play a part.
Surgeons have historically been less involved in pre-hospital care and certainly in law enforcement pre-hospital care than our emergency medicine colleagues. But it's us who are the experts in trauma care and trauma management. So we've got to go out, we've got to reach out to the law enforcement agencies in our community to say, listen, you're a key critical partner in the survival from active shooter and intentional mass casualty events, and we want to give you the training, the knowledge, and the equipment to do just that, to help us maximize survival from these things.
There is a model for this outreach already. It too came from the medical community.
The American Heart Association a long time ago identified that lay people ought to be taught CPR, and that it was important to do that as quickly as the heart stopped in order to maintain blood flow. Well, the same thing applies to bleeding. As soon as a patient starts bleeding, we need to make them stop. EMS is not going to be on the scene. Law enforcement is not going to be as close on the scene, so it's our responsibility to get the citizens trained in how to use a tourniquet, how to use a pressure bandage, and have those available.
In the end, surgeons are part of larger communities. Protecting the health of those communities goes beyond attending to their physical wounds.
But the damage to the psyche of the population and to the people and families of those people involved is huge. And you can minimize that by having a well-organized structure, which again tell the people what to expect. They expect it. They see what happens. They're comfortable that you have a proper system in place and the maximum amount of survival was obtained.